I am sure that you have felt frustrated when people can't understand you because you are pronouncing things wrong in English. They might think that you were having a nice cold beer in the woods, but actually you were terrified because you ran into a bear.
Yeah, can't believe my luck.
Well, in today's episode, 𝗥𝗴𝗃 and I discuss how to easily pronounce the most difficult sounds in English so that you are never misunderstood again.
You don't want to be thinking, when you're thinking.
By the way, to get the best possible experience with today's lesson, you should definitely be watching it on the RealLife English app because you can follow along with a digital transcript so you understand 100% of what 𝗥𝗴𝗃 and I are saying. And in addition, you will never forget the new vocabulary using intelligent vocabulary flashcards. So check it out. It's free to download and you'll find the link down in the description below. Now, let's get started. 𝗥𝗴𝗃, it's so great to be recording another podcast with you. It feels like it's been ages because I was on vacation, then you were on vacation.
We missed this interaction between us, right? The topic we chose today will be really awesome. I think both of us really love it.
Most definitely. We get to get our nerd on as English teachers, as we say.
Oh, what is a nerd?
This is even an expression with nerd. A nerd is someone who typically is very studious, or get our geek on, we could say as well. I think nerd is someone who really likes to study, you think about it in school, and a geek is maybe someone who's into things that are more counterculture, like certain collections or certain things that aren't considered cool when you're in school. So we could say either. Maybe it's getting our geek on. And to get something on is like you're celebrating that, you're getting to have a fun time with it. So it's great to have you here as well, dear audience. And if you stick around until the end, you are going to learn how to pronounce some of the most difficult sounds that 𝗥𝗴𝗃 and I have observed English learners have trouble with. You're going to learn why we would rather have a beer in the woods than run into a bear, of course. And the mistake that 𝗥𝗴𝗃 and I find most annoying when we hear English learners make it. And finally, a very wise quote that tells us why it's so challenging to learn English. And if you're new here, every single week we make lessons like this one that help you to become a confident and natural English speaker. So if that sounds like part of your goals for your English, then be sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell down below if you're on YouTube, or follow us on any podcast platform so you don't miss a single new episode, and you can join our community of millions of learners who are revolutionizing the way they learn English. So 𝗥𝗴𝗃, the other day, Justin, the CEO of RealLife English, of course, shared a really funny but really witty, observant video with us. I thought we could start off by watching a little bit of that.
Let's watch it. But I like the word witty. Could you define it? What is a witty video?
Good point. Wit is something that is smart and humorous at the same time.
Oh, so let's not make our audience wait and let's watch this witty video.
So this word is ear, which means this word is beer. No, it's bear. You don't see how? It's because it's ear with a B. Bear. That's why. Which means this word would be bared? No. What would you think? It's bear with a D. Beard. Let's take a step back, okay? This word is bear, which means this word is fair. No, it's fear. You don't see how? Ear with an F. Fear, which means ear with a P would be pear. No, it's pear. Remember bear? I guess I'm moving too fast.
That's the beauty of English language, but that's exactly why it is so difficult to pronounce the words correctly, because English is not a phonetic language. You see, these vowels patterns, they are not consistent. There is certain inconsistency in pronunciation, those especially letter combination of EA.
Yeah, so many learners have trouble with this too because they come from a language that is phonetic. You know, for most of the languages that I've learned, luckily, have been phonetic, like German, Spanish, Catalan, Portuguese. So if you know the sounds, it's like you see any word and you know how to pronounce it. But in English, it's not the case at all, even for us native speakers. I remember a word that when I was younger that I had read many times and I knew from context what it meant, but I hadn't actually used it in my speech. And I was talking to my dad. This word was ALBEIT. And I said, oh, I'll bite da 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 da.
I'll bite.
Meaning like, even though that thing is true. And my dad said, do you mean albeit? So
it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one.
this happens
Exactly.
even for native speakers, that if we have read a word many times, but we've never actually said it, we might get the pronunciation wrong.
That's why they say that trust your ears, not what you see, right? And that's very important when you learn a language, to expose yourself to it as much as possible. And of course, it will also be accompanied by reading and learning how the word looks, but you should really trust your ears. And this video, actually reminded me of a story from my student. Actually, the other week I had a group class with my students, and we were discussing our favorite vacation activities, and she was sharing about her recent hiking adventure, and at some point in the story, so like she set a beautiful scenery, like breathtaking mountains, a group of close friends, they're enjoying the weather, enjoying their hike. At some point in the story, there comes the word beer. And my brain starts racing. I can't figure it out. Like, how does beer fit into the hiking story, right? So I started fantasizing. I thought, oh, maybe they brought beer with them to celebrate the first one to get to the summit, But then she said something like, and we all froze, we couldn't move, we were just staring at it. And I thought, why would you stare at a beer? That's when
Shocked
it
to see a
dawned
beer
on
in the
me.
words.
Yeah, can't believe my luck. Yeah. Then when it's like, when I realized that, oh, you're talking about a bear. Like, so we had a good laugh. And I said something that, to encourage her that something really special just happened. And let's all take advantage of that and learn forever the difference to between these words, like a bear and beer. So I think, I'm telling now not to just entertain you guys here watching and listening to us, but also to give you an opportunity to once and for all remember the difference between bear and beer.
That is a fantastic example. I think that there's a group of words that's like bear, beer, beard, and bird that is very, very challenging for most English learners.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out, you used some really nice expressions here. I love that you said, it dawned on me, that when you realized the difference between that she wasn't actually trying to say beer, that she was trying to say bear, that they saw a bear, they were staring at a bear, right? So that's a really nice way to say that you realized something. And you also mentioned that they were hiking. And for me, this is a very American or very English sounding word. So what does it mean if you go on a hike?
You go to the mountains. So you take your tent, probably your backpack, like everything with you, and you ascend the mountain. So you have this activity, right, in the mountains, like hiking, going up the mountain.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily need to be backpacking either, like with a backpack or tent. It can just be a daily stroll, but it's exactly like you said, ascending the mountain, walking in the mountains rather than leisurely stroll through your neighborhood or through your city.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to circle back to something very wise that you said that I want to make sure we highlight, this whole idea of trust your ears, not your eyes. And I wanted to bring into our Real Life Way methodology that we have the part that's activated. That's really what we're doing today with pronunciation, is activating it. And one big part of that is always learning. So for me, it's taking on a mindset of curiosity, that so many of us we're very attached to the visual part of the language, being able to see the text, using subtitles and so on. You and Izzy just recorded a lesson about this recently, right? But sometimes it's really good if we can turn off the subtitles, or if we're listening to a podcast like this, that we can just listen for a moment, not be so anxious about understanding everything, but really pay attention to the sounds. So you're trying to break that habit or that reliance on just needing to see the words, so that you can start really paying attention to how do they actually sound, and start working on that also when you speak, right?
So I know the word to attach, like for example, you can attach a file to your email, but you said that we are attached to something. Could you define this meaning of this word, to be attached to something?
Yeah. In that sense, you can think literally attached, you're connected to something, but it's like you have a reliance on that. You might be attached to another person in the sense that you don't know how to function or to live without that person, or you're attached with the way that you've always done something, even though maybe there's a better way of doing it. So in this sense, people are attached to their bad habit of relying on their eyes. But as you said, English is a non-phonetic language, so this can get you into trouble. People might not understand you. They might think that you were having a nice cold beer in the woods, but actually you were terrified because you ran into a bear.
Yeah, exactly. That, you started talking about real life way and the word activate it, right? So that we have like this deliberate practice. That also reminded me of the thing I wanted to share with our students. I'll just be sharing something very interesting for me because I am fascinated by language as not a tool for communication, but also as a system and this unique phenomenon all humans share. So guys, just imagine there are about 800 sounds of phonemes in the languages that exist worldwide.
That's
And
insane.
English,
So many.
that's insane. Really, exactly. And English, can you guess the number? How many sounds are there in English?
I think like just vowel sounds, we have maybe 30 some, but I've heard this in the past, but now I'm bad with numbers, so I'm probably slipping my mind.
Same here, terrible at numbers, but I have a note here to help me. So there are 44 phonemes in English language.
There you go.
Just to
A
compare
phoneme
it,
is like an individual sound, right?
yeah, it's exactly. Thanks to pointing out, it's phoneme. It's a term from linguistics, an individual sound. So just to compare, in Spanish, which you speak also, right? There are 24 to 27 phonemes, depending on the accent. I was so surprised to learn that Spanish is one of rare languages to share this th sound with English. Like pareces.
Castilian Spanish. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of the accents. Castilian Spanish?
Yeah. It's like Spanish from Spain is, I believe, the only one that has this, but maybe in South America, there's some that also that carried over. But as far as I know, it's the only accent that has the
So now I'm asking you, so in Spanish, there are 24 to 27 phonemes. How do you think, what's the number in Ukrainian language, the number of phonemes?
I'm like way too ignorant. I'm going to guess
More or
it's
less.
in 30, mid-30s, let's say.
Very close. So you did it, like you guessed. So we have 38 phonemes.
Oh, wow.
And what I'm talking about is that when we are born, like when we are babies, we are attuned to picking up any sound of any language, any existing language. We have this ability. So a very good tip for all expecting mothers or mothers with infants in their first year of life, like expose your child to multiple languages, even if they don't grow up bilingual, because later in life they will develop this brain plasticity or neuroplasticity. So it will be much easier for them to learn how to produce foreign sounds. Yeah, coming back to our topic, why is it so difficult to pronounce English sounds for some students? Because it's just like those sounds don't exist in your native language. That's why you don't have your muscles trained to produce this sound, right?
Nor your ears trained to perceive them when you're an adult, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was something fascinating to learn from you, that even as adults later, if we were not lucky to be exposed to multiple languages, it's still possible to do. You just like have to be exposed more and really to train your muscles of articulation.
I would say too, it's just like, it gives me a lot of empathy thinking for Spanish speakers, because I think you said 24 to 27. So of those, let's take 27 to give them the large scale. But of those, maybe 22, let's say, or 24 coincide with English, right? So it's like you have 20 plus phonemes that you have to learn in order to be able to speak English, at least if you're wanting to speak it accurately. That's a lot of sounds to learn, isn't it? Especially as an adult. So we've talked about this actually on a few podcasts, but I did want to repeat it just because it's so relevant to today's topic. But that a really great tip that we can give you is to actually go to, for example, ChatGPT. You can use a AI resource and ask what sounds exist in English that don't exist in, and put your native language. So for example, for Ksenia, she could say, what sounds exist in English that don't exist in Ukrainian? And then you have a list of sounds, and it's like, okay, these are the sounds that I have to master. And you can go onto YouTube, for example, and search for videos of pronunciation tutorials for each of these individual sounds. And then the other tip I would give related to this, that we're going to get into the most common mistakes, and if you have one of these mistakes, this could be really valuable for you, is maybe you're going to find a video like that, for example, from Rachel's English. She has these amazing tutorials. And she goes into so much detail about how to produce that sound with your mouth. But what do you need to do before that? You need to actually have an awareness over your instrument, over your muscles of articulation, over everything that's happening in your mouth, in your throat, in your nose. And this takes time. It takes practice. It takes patience. But over time, as you play around with these different muscles, I think play is a really important word there, it will become something that you're more comfortable with. I'm definitely not the best at this either, but I've definitely, learning languages has given me a lot more awareness. And when I've learned a new language, or there's a sound that I need to work on in another language, I can start to try to like move things in my register, you know, and wherever it is in my mouth, my nose, my throat, to attempt to start learning that sound.
That's exactly, like you said, the word play. That's exactly what I was doing with Mira yesterday. The school year started and she had her English homework. You know, she asked my help, and it was very difficult for her to pronounce the word singing, because we don't have this nasal sound in Ukrainian, this ng. And she struggled to pronounce that, and I was trying exactly to explain the position of the tongue, how you, like, you know, somehow to help her with the Ukrainian sound. I said, like, okay, try to pronounce g, but at the same position, but then you say the sound n, but with the tongue from position for g. And she said, it is difficult, guys. It is difficult. Like, it is difficult for kids, but also for adults. Just like for the other day, one of my students also, I pointed out that she has to work more on her th sound, because she is used to saying sound s instead of th. So there might happen something like I'm sinking instead of I'm thinking, you know, and that's a very tricky mistake to make.
It is. It reminds me of this really hilarious commercial that it's exactly this, like a German Coast Guard, and he gets an SOS from an American ship. Have you seen this before, Ksenia?
No, I don't think so. It's also about thinking, sinking.
Exactly. Maybe we can pull that up.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
What are you thinking about? Yeah, exactly that. You don't want to be thinking, yeah, when you are thinking.
You don't want someone to be calling you for help because they're sinking, and the response you get is, what are you thinking about? What are you thinking about?
That's hilarious. Guys, for all of you who may be unfamiliar with the word to sink is to drown. If it is about a person,
or a ship,
and
to go down.
About a ship,
right?
Yeah, it goes down, goes underwater.
So, Ksenia, I wanted to get into one of your and my pet peeves when it comes to our English learners that were around, people who are still working on their pronunciation. But first, maybe we can give a special thanks to our learner of the week.
Oh, yeah. So this is a message we got from one of our app users, and they write, the RealLife app offers a fantastic method for learning English. I've noticed real improvement in my day-to-day conversations. After starting with YouTube videos, this app has been great for reinforcing what I've learned. Do you know when you get into a conversation in English and that word that you know you've heard before just doesn't come to you in the moment when you need it? I know how frustrating that feels. I've been there myself. To be telling a story or to be sharing something interesting, and then suddenly you find yourself pausing frequently because you're just forgetting all the useful words you know. And that sucks, because you know what you want to say. It's just you wish you were able to express it the same way you can do it in your native language. Let me tell you, this is exactly what the Real Life English app can help you with. First of all, it's a great way for you to understand everything that Ethan and I are saying on this podcast because you get a full interactive transcript for every single one of our lessons. And to help you actually remember all the words and expressions that you are learning so that you can later use them in your real life conversations, we give you access to vocabulary flashcards. This is a really fascinating tool our students use to improve their real-life fluency in English, and it is scientifically proven to expand your vocabulary forever. I highly recommend you check it out. Just look for Real Life English in the App Store or Google Play, or simply grab the link in the description wherever you are watching or listening to this. It's free to get started, so just go and download it.
So Ksenia, I mentioned this sound that is one of our pet peeves. So a pet peeve is something that someone finds particularly irritating or annoying, right? So for example, one of my pet peeves might be if I'm driving and people who are really bad, inconsiderate drivers who don't put their turn signal and they cut you off, they cut in front of you, and so on. That's a pet peeve. Another one is this sound. So what is it, Ksenia? Both of us have this.
Yeah, and actually that started back in school for me. I hated when my schoolmates would read work it, like it, learn it instead of learned, worked, liked, right? There is a certain rule to follow to remember how to pronounce the ending ed correctly because it's not always id.
It's less often id. Even.
Exactly. You only get id after the consonants T and D, right? If the verb ends in T and D, just remember it's very easy. Just two letters, T and D. So after these letters, you pronounce it like id. Can you give us some examples with words ending on T and D?
Yeah, you have like wanted or added. And this comes back to trusting your ears over your eyes because it really is a sound thing. That once you start to train yourself to this, it's going to be the same for you, that it'll start being annoying when you hear other people saying, something like love it, kiss it, hug it, instead of saying it correctly. The other two also really have to do with sounds, right? So do you know those rules?
Yeah, so we would pronounce the ending ed as t after voiceless consonant, except T, because we remember that number one rule, T and D, they give us id. Yeah, all the voiceless consonants, those are sh, p, k, right? So they give us t sound. For example, hoped, liked. You see, I pronounce t at the end. Hoped. It's not hope it. Yeah. And the third rule is we have the sound d after vowels and all the voiced consonants besides D. So you already said loved, yeah, played. So we hear here D sound at the end of these words.
And you mentioned this concept of, so it comes back to sound, so voiced and unvoiced consonants. So if people don't know much about linguistics, when we say voiced, it just means that your vocal cords are vibrating. So there's sounds that actually they're the exact same sound, except in as far as the mechanics involved in your muscles articulation, but with one you're voicing it by vibrating your vocal cords, and with another one you're not. So for example, you have the f and v, the F sound and the V sound. The v and f, it's the exact same thing happening with my mouth, but with the v, I'm also vibrating my vocal cords, so we hear kind of this buzzing almost like a B, right? And you also have like p, v, b, the B sound is kind of vibrating, it's voiced, while the p, you hear it's just like a burst of air without any vibration. So this is also, again, coming back to your ears, because when you hear this vibration, it kind of becomes natural for you to be like, okay, it's a after. It's just a D sound. You don't do an extra syllable. And when it's unvoiced, then it should be a t. It starts just to sound natural because these consonants go together with the t.
You brought these pairs like b, p, v, f, and that reminded me of an excellent exercise we could share with our students, like minimal pairs to practice sounds.
That's really powerful.
For me, I was struggling with long and short sounds, because this is something we don't have in Ukraine. For example, ship and sheep, live and leave, right? So I would do the exercise with minimal pairs to practice these sounds. And for people who have issues with th sound, yeah, they can practice that, like think and thing, yeah, thank and tank. And also, we, like Ukrainian students, they often struggle with the pairs v and w. So I would say that another pet peeve of mine is when people say very. I very much something, you know, instead of very.
In Spain, it would be similar that they don't have the v, the voiced v sound, and they say a b instead. So they'll say like berry,
Very.
also with the r, berry.
But what about American kids? When they learn to speak, are there any sounds they particularly struggle with? Like it takes longer to learn how to pronounce?
Well, there's, like you mentioned, your student with the th sound. That's difficult even for American kids that are learning it at first. And what I used to recommend to my students is, and this is true with any sound, really exaggerate it. So how do you really exaggerate a th? We make it by putting our tongue between our teeth. And because I've been doing this for 30 plus years that I've been speaking English, it's super natural for me. For Ksenia, obviously, too, it's super natural. But if it's a sound you still haven't developed, exaggerate it by like really stick your tongue out, like look in the mirror and like be able to see your tongue, like, because if you start to do this, it's kind of impossible not to make it. So with any of these sounds that are difficult, see how you can really exaggerate the movement of the muscles so that you're facilitating that happening. And when you do that over and over again, it's almost like you're taking your mouth to the gym. So then you can kind of pull it back. You don't have to stick your tongue all the way out of your mouth when you're speaking. And that way, when you actually get in conversation, you're not spitting on the other person, which is always good. Always appreciated. But it makes me think too of when I was learning Spanish. I struggle with this a lot with the rolled R sound that I believe you also have in Ukrainian.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was thinking about this, like, how did I develop that? I used to practice it in my car when I'd be driving places. When I was in university and I was taking Spanish classes, because I was kind of embarrassed in my classes that I couldn't do it. And at that time, Lady Gaga's song "Bad Romance" was really popular. And I don't know if you can think of the song, but it has a lot of like the ra ra la
yeah.
la. So it has a lot of these R sounds, and I would try to roll the R sounds in that song. And over time, in my car, singing Lady Gaga and trying to turn the R's into rolled R's, eventually it just started to happen. So it's kind of like practice makes perfect. And find these moments where you can do that on your own so that you're not feeling, embarrassed trying to...
That's exactly. I think many students here, they have these issues because they feel kind of awkward. They don't want to look stupid and really practice that in their English classes when like teacher tells us how to do that, right? And like we kind of feel shy and we don't want to look stupid, and not so often you would come home and do the same just with your mirror, but that's exactly what you should do, right? To to achieve those results with the sound.
And like I said, music. So I mean, I was using a song in English to do this, but music can be really great for this because in general, when you're singing, you're opening up more your mouth, you're opening up more your nose. So this can be a really great way to practice your pronunciation as well. So maybe if you're working on the TH, listen to a song and like as you're listening to it, really pay attention to all those words that have the TH and try to really exaggerate that sound, or any of the other ones we're talking about if it's the W and the V. You talked about too, you asked about American kids. So another one is the L sound and the R sound tend to be very difficult for kids to pick up. And I know in a lot of East Asian languages, this is the case that they have difficult between L and R, but I think this is because the R sound exists, but the L sound doesn't, if I'm not mistaken. And so their L's turned to R's. I'm not sure exactly why that happens. With kids, American kids at least, it's a little bit different. It tends to be just that both of them are difficult sounds. So maybe instead of saying I'm a little tired, they'd say I'm a little tired. So they'll maybe turn the L into a W, and the R they just sort of admit until they can learn it. But then eventually it's through repetition, through listening to a lot, through copying their parents, maybe through corrections. they are able to start producing those sounds.
Oh, you were talking about kids, and I just like reminded when I started teaching Mira English. So we've got this funny, cute video from, I think she was 2 years old back then, when she was trying to pronounce the word vegetables. And this is a very hard word to learn because we don't have that letter combination like 𝗔𝗽, vegetables, you know? This exactly the first part makes it difficult. Can we show it?
Oh, if you have it, let's watch it.
Скажи vegetables.
Vegetables.
That's so adorable.
Vegetables.
What are you saying at the beginning? Saying like kaji?
I say скажи, like tell
Скажи.
vegetables. Tell vegetables.
Say vegetables.
Say vegetables.
Yeah, there's a good trick there is just say veggies and you're done.
Exactly.
Vegetables.
Uh-huh.
I think too it's different in British and American English. I think they might pronounce both the E's, so they might say vegetables. But in American English, we omit the second E, so it's just vegetables.
It's even
and then
harder.
veggies.
You make it even harder for us when we don't have that extra sound in between 𝗔𝗽.
So this is another thing that's hard for American kids as well, is when there's these sound clusters, which means there's a combination of sounds, or any sound is just like a mechanic in your mouth, that are difficult to make. So it's true that 𝗔𝗽, that's a really weird, like you're going like from your tongue being down to it, like has to move very quickly to do that. So it's one of those things that with practice, you get better at it. Kids have trouble with this. I looked up some examples like street, like that combination is very difficult. Street, or splash, the splash. And in fact, it made me think about, there's a very cute viral video of a kid trying to say fire truck. He has trouble with the sound, so the TR combination. So maybe we can give that a watch.
Say fire truck.
Fire truck.
You're gonna go, oh, truck.
Oh, look.
Zach, right in the camera. Say, oh, truck.
Oh, fuck.
Of course, it's wrong, but you know it's funny. Yeah, it is.
And we have just a couple more really difficult sounds that we want to cover before we wrap up. But we're really curious also from you guys, are there any sounds that we haven't covered yet today, or that we have, that you find are really challenging? And maybe we can even create another video where we're covering some more of these difficult sounds. So Ksenia, I think this wasn't the case for you, but for most people learning American English, you can probably guess something that's really challenging for them is the difference between can, the affirmative, and can't.
Yeah, especially when you drop the T, right? And you only have can and can, and it's impossible to differentiate them.
That's actually one of those sounds. We talked about it, I believe, on the last podcast with Izzy, because we were talking about British English, which also has different accents, have this a lot. This glottal T, that that you have like in uh-oh, between those two syllables. And that's at the end of can't, but that's one of those things that when we talked about there being phonemes that exist in certain languages and don't exist in others, if that glottal T sound doesn't exist in your native language, you're probably not even going to hear it. So most learners, when you say can't, they're just hearing can because their ears aren't attuned to that glottal T sound.
And I'm so grateful that there are no clicking sound in English, because remember I was telling you about the number of phonemes in each language. So the language with the most number of phonemes existing now, it's Khoisan language spoken in Botswana, and it has 100 phonemes, including some clicking sounds.
Oh, wow.
I believe Kase was bringing some examples, right?
Yeah, I think the Koza or
something like that.
Koza,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
I had a friend also living in South Africa and was telling me about that. So the trick here, at least when you have can as an auxiliary verb in a sentence, the good thing is the affirmative gets reduced, so it actually becomes a kun. But can't is always emphasized, so it always has this strong A. Can't. So even if it sounds very similar to the affirmative one you're usually going to hear, and you can even try producing this as a short sound kun. And we have a whole video all about this you guys can check out if that's one of your really difficult sounds. The last sound that I think many learners have a difficult time with you'll have to tell me if it's true for Ukrainian speakers, is this dark L sound, like in world or call, bull. It's this sound at the back of your throat. It's almost as if you are gargling. Gargling is maybe when you have a sore throat or when you're using mouthwash to clean your mouth, that you do like a so it's that same place, and the sound is very similar. So you might practice gargling and then try to be like world. Call.
Yeah, there are like exactly like just use ChatGPT asking you to provide lists of words with this dark L, and that's exactly the sound I also had to work with. So I don't believe we have dark L in English. So yeah.
In Ukrainian, you mean, right?
I'm sorry, in Ukrainian, exactly.
All right, Ksenia, let's check out our quote of the day. You want to do the honors in reading it?
It is challenging. So I hope I can make it. So bear with me. English is tough. It can be understood through thorough thought, though. All those words are like they look almost the same. Yeah, through thorough thought, though, but they are pronounced differently.
It's almost like poetry because it's capturing the pain that it is to learn a non-phonetic language like English. So I thought I would just highlight here that we have the same O-U-G-H letter combination pronounced, I believe, in 4 different ways. So we have it being pronounced as uf in tough, like cough as well, right? That the GH for some reason becomes an F. I don't know how that happened. So we have tough, but then in through, we just get it as an oo sound, right? Through. Thorough and though, they have the same sound. So it's both a O sound. So we have through and then thorough, though, that are O sound. And then thought, that's a ah sound, thought.
Yeah, exactly. And Ethan, we don't have the digging part today, but just let me share and recommend to our students one of the podcasts that I particularly like, and that is very, very fitting to our today's topic. So this is a Rethinking podcast with Adam Grant, and he invited a linguist to one of his podcasts, and they were discussing English language, English grammar, and for you guys who are curious why in English you have to pronounce colonel but spell it like colonel, right? And why we have silent S in island, Iceland, right? They talk about it and share so many other interesting, fascinating things about English language. I highly recommend it, and we will leave it in the show notes, the links to that podcast.
All right, Ksenia. Well, it's been an absolute joy to get to talk and geek out with you about pronunciation. And if you are enjoying these lessons, a free way that you can support us is by, of course, hitting the subscribe button and the bell on YouTube and giving this video a like. That really helps us get out to more people, help them to take their English to the next level, maybe have more accurate pronunciation and listening with us. Also, if you are listening to this on a podcasting platform like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. Again, this really does help us to get out to more learners. And of course, if you haven't yet, download the Real Life English app and give it a try. And if you enjoy it, then leave us a 5-star review in your favorite app store. And of course, that said, no matter what divides us, be that how many phonemes your language has, that which unites us is far greater. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Something that has always bothered me as an English learner myself is when I run into a movie or a video in English where there's people speaking with a British accent and I don't understand a thing.
I doubt that's what it's about, you know what I mean? It's like everyone's a bit square at the moment, aren't they? You know what I mean? Everyone's just a bit serious and miserable, you know what I mean?
Should it really be that difficult to comprehend British speech if I can perfectly understand Americans? It's all English, right? Well, the answer is no. It shouldn't be that difficult. It can actually be pretty easy.